A war unlike any other. A war that had everything: blood, betrayal, faith, and the battle for power. It wasn't just fought with guns, but with ideologies, beliefs, and global ambitions. This is the story of a nation that stood against a superpower. The war that turned Afghanistan into the graveyard of empires. The silent beginning. The year was 1978. In Afghanistan, a communist coup overthrew President Mohammed Daoud Khan. A new government came to power, the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan, supported by the Soviet Union. They promised progress, but instead brought fear. The new communist regime began forcing reforms, changing traditions, suppressing religion, and punishing anyone who resisted. Soon, the Afghan people rose in anger. Villages turned into battlegrounds, and what began as small uprisings soon became a full-scale rebellion. The Soviet decision. By late 1979, the Soviet Union realized the Afghan government was losing control. The rebels were spreading fast, and Moscow feared losing its influence in Central Asia. So, on December 24, 1979, the Soviet army invaded Afghanistan. More than 100,000 Soviet troops crossed the border. Helicopters filled the skies, tanks rolled across mountains. Within days, the Soviets assassinated the Afghan leader Hafizullah Amin and replaced him with a more loyal ally, Babrak Karmal. They believed the war would end quickly, but Afghanistan was not an easy land to conquer. The rise of resistance. Across the mountains and valleys, Afghan fighters began to unite. They called themselves Mujahideen, the warriors of faith. Ordinary farmers, shepherds, and students picked up rifles to fight the Red Army. They knew the land better than anyone. En aan spoor wanindisatonsar en bersteen kerbanin steender. And died in Berdanze. They fought with passion and belief. The Soviet troops, heavily armed and modern, struggled against these guerrilla fighters. Ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, and traps in the mountains made every Soviet advance deadly. A new chapter begins. But this was not just a local war anymore. Soon, it would pull in the United States, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and many others. Each side would fight not only for land, but for ideology and influence. The world was about to witness one of the longest and bloodiest battles of the Cold War era. A war that would cost millions of lives, and eventually bring down one of the greatest empires in history, the Soviet Union itself. The American strategy. In the early 1980s, the United States saw the Soviet invasion as a golden opportunity. After years of tension in the Cold War, Washington wanted to strike back, not through direct war but by bleeding the Soviets quietly. And so, in 1980, the CIA launched a top-secret mission, Operation Cyclone. The goal: arm and fund Afghan fighters to defeat the Red Army. But America couldn't do it alone. They needed someone close to Afghanistan, someone who knew the terrain, the people, and the language. That's where Pakistan stepped in. The role of Pakistan. Under General Zia-ul-Haq, Pakistan became the front line of this secret war. Billions of dollars and weapons began flowing through Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. From American money to Chinese rifles, from Saudi donations to training camps. Everything passed through Pakistan into the hands of the Mujahideen. Refugee camps near the Afghan border became training grounds. Young men from across the Muslim world came to join the holy war, or jihad, against the Soviets. The world watched in silence, while Pakistan became both a gateway and a guardian of resistance. The battles intensify. By 1983, the Mujahideen were no longer just rebels. They were an organized force spread across mountains, valleys, and deserts. Armed with rifles, RPGs, and faith, they launched ambushes that shattered Soviet convoys. But in 1986, everything changed. The CIA supplied a new weapon, the FIM-92 Stinger missile. For the first time, Afghan fighters could shoot down Soviet helicopters from the sky. The balance of power began to shift. Each burning helicopter was not just a loss of machine, it was a blow to Soviet pride. The human cost, but victory came at a terrible price. Afghan villages were bombed, millions fled to Pakistan and Iran, and entire generations grew up knowing nothing but war. The Soviets, trapped in endless battles, began losing men, morale, and money. Inside the USSR, questions started rising. Why are we fighting this war? What are we gaining? And far away in Washington, American leaders smiled quietly. Their plan was working. After nearly a decade of blood and destruction, the Red Army was on the brink of defeat. The empire that once ruled half the world was now broken in the mountains of Afghanistan. But what came next was even more chaotic. As the Soviets withdrew, a new struggle for power began, one that would give birth to the Taliban and reshape the future of the entire world. Settings. Make the background music piano music copyright free. Add, word by word. Subtitle. Use a male clear American voice for the narrator. The Soviet defeat. By 1988, the Soviet Union had lost more than 15,000 soldiers in Afghanistan. Thousands were wounded, and countless others never returned. At home, mothers wept, soldiers questioned their leaders, and the Soviet economy was collapsing under the weight of war. In February 1989, the last Soviet troops crossed the bridge over the Amu Darya River, leaving Afghanistan behind, in ruins. It was the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, but not the end of Afghanistan's suffering. The power vacuum. Once the Soviets left, the Mujahideen, the heroes of resistance, turned against each other. Different commanders wanted control of Kabul, each claiming to fight for Islam, but secretly chasing power. From 1992 to 1996, Afghanistan fell into chaos. Cities were bombed, thousands of civilians died, and warlords divided the nation into pieces. The same country that had united against the Soviets was now tearing itself apart. The birth of the Taliban. Amid the chaos, a new group began to rise, a group of young religious students, many of them raised in refugee camps in Pakistan. They called themselves Taliban, meaning students. Led by Mullah Muhammad Omar, they promised to bring peace, law, and Islamic order to the country. At first, people welcomed them. The Taliban cleared roads, punished criminals, and restored basic safety. But soon, their rule became harsh. Music was banned, women were forced out of schools and workplaces, and the strictest interpretation of Islamic law was enforced. By 1996, the Taliban captured Kabul, executed the former president, and declared Afghanistan an Islamic emirate. The world had changed once again. En san sum, as van sensain, en zadobemine, en zondidem, and a new chapter of conflict was about to begin. The legacy of the war. The Soviet-Afghan War was more than just a battle for land. It reshaped global politics. It helped end the Cold War, but it also gave birth to new powers, new ideologies, and new enemies. The same fighters once supported by the West would soon become the threat of the future. From the ashes of this war would rise groups that changed the 21st century forever. The Afghanistan War taught the world one painful lesson: no empire can conquer a people who refuse to surrender. But it also showed how power, religion, and politics can turn heroes into enemies, and even today, the echoes of that war still haunt the mountains of Afghanistan.